I've been keeping mollies for the past year now. I made this video to share what I've learned and how it compares to the common advice found online. Hi there, it's Connor. Welcome to my channel. I first got mollies when I got back into the hobby a year ago. They're actually the first two fish I picked up, two black mollies. I wanted to give a species profile and go through my experience keeping them so far. So a brief history, as I said, they were the first fish I got when I got back into the hobby a little over a year ago now. I got two black mollies, ended up being a male and a female. And one of the really cool things, and this might have accelerated me wanting to keep in the hobby and go deeper, is they actually gave birth, the female gave birth the night we got them. I remember just kind of checking in on them the night before bed, and I saw this one little fish swimming around, and I was like, couldn't believe it. And then as I looked, I found a few more. That night, probably found 5 or 6, but then the next day, I ended up seeing there was like 20 in there. And so that was really, really cool. And so I got a few silver mollies, and then they lived together. I'd say about 3 of the black molly fry ended up living to actually grow up. But then, unfortunately, the mollies actually, most of them, at least the adults, started slowly passing away. They ended up getting wasting disease. And I think it's for a few reasons. One, ended up having more males than females, or not the 2-to-1 ratio. And then I ended up having a rabies shark that you can actually see here, who was pretty aggressive towards the mollies, and especially as they started to pass away and there was less of them. But I'll talk about that later and my kind of thoughts on it more. But I currently now have 5 mollies that are, I guess, semi-adults. They're between 1 to 1.5 inches, so they're not fully grown yet. And then I actually do have a bunch of fry. But the kind of cool thing, I think, is the mollies that I have right now, they all were born in my tanks under my care. I have 1 full silver molly that was born from the 3 silver mollies I had bought in. And then the other 4 are black times silver molly hybrids that were born when my silver and black mollies mated. So getting into tank size, you'll read online anywhere it's recommended from 10 gallons to 20 gallons for the minimum. As always, larger is better. I'd say to be safe, probably like 15 is best. I think you can do 10. But they're very active fish. They like to swim around. And I think like waste-wise, filter-wise, a 10 will be able to handle it if you have like 3 mollies, for example. But really for them, it's probably best to have 15. If not, a 20 is probably best. And a 20 is actually what I'm currently keeping my, the ones I'm raising up right now in. I'd actually love to keep them in this tank, but I know my rainbow shark will harass them, so I'd rather avoid that. For tank setup, they're not too picky. They do like to hide sometimes, especially the females. The males can harass them a bit. It's good to have some decorations, some caves, some plants, but it really doesn't matter. They're not too picky. They do like to eat algae though. So having live plants is there's a big benefit to having live plants because they do like to eat algae and it's a healthy part of the diet. So it's great if you can have live plants, but otherwise they're not very picky. The substrate doesn't matter. Light doesn't really matter. It's more so water parameters and space that matters for them than actually what is taking up the tank. For water conditions online, you'll generally read that temperature is anywhere from 68 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit, pH from 7 to 8.5, and hardness from 15 to 30. So the thing you notice is the pH is higher and the hardness is higher compared to maybe your typical fish. And that's generally true with most live bears. So my conditions that I keep them at, I keep them right at 78 degrees Fahrenheit. My pH is right around 7.4, and then hardness is around 12 degrees. And so my hardness is a little low, but I do add aquarium salt, so that helps with it. And I'd recommend salt for them. They like that. Actually, when a lot of the ones in the stores, they actually were bred in brackish water. So I think it's highly recommended to have a tank where they have some salt. I kind of keep it simple. For every 5 gallons I put in the tank, I put 1 tablespoon, and that's been working pretty good. But you just want to think about if you're having mollies with other fish, you don't want fish that like softer water and wouldn't tolerate aquarium salt because they're kind of at odds there. But otherwise for maintenance, I think mollies are pretty simple. They're pretty easy to care for other than, they have kind of specific water parameters, but as far as cleanliness, they're not going to be a particularly messy fish in my opinion. And so doing 20 to 30% water changes once a week, as long as the rest of your stocking fits the tank size, I think that'll be plenty good. So pretty much just kind of standard maintenance will be great for them. Going on to foods, There's a few things that they do like in their diet. So I'd recommend the main thing is just have a nice quality flake pellet. So I've been going with Tetramin, and I've been happy with all my fish have been seeming to like it. So any quality flake food will be good. Another food I've gotten kind of recently is from Rapashi. The gel food. It's real easy to make. You just boil water, mix it in, and then put it in the fridge, and it turns into gel, and you just cut it up into little pieces. But it's the Rapashi grub pie, and there actually is a grub pie for reptiles. You want the one that has, it looks like a swordtail, almost like a swordtail molly combination, but you want that one. I found this, if you're gonna have fry, it's amazing because they'll go for this easy and they can easily pick it off. But otherwise, they do like algae, so if you have live plants, then they can get their algae there. I would say that I would say you can kind of let a tank get a little algae in it, and that'll actually be beneficial for them. And you'll see them, if you have moss or anything, they'll be picking on the moss. So you do want some algae. If you don't have live plants, or you can't get that much algae, or you don't like how it looks, you can get like algae flakes. That'll be great. Also like spirulina flakes. Then, any live bear based foods. No Hikari has a fancy guppy food. You can get that, and that'd be great for them. So they're not too picky, but you just kind of want to make sure they have some sort of algae spirulina in their diet, and just a quality flake. And they seem to be loving this. So if you can get this, or if you have fry, it's even better for that. So I'd say that's great. The other thing with fry, if you don't want to do gel, is you can crush up flakes in your hands and put it in. The thing that I've noticed is when they're a few weeks old, they'll eat those no problem. But when they're only a few days old, when they're just born, I've noticed they'll never really go to the top. So I don't know how much food they actually eat with just flakes, crushed flakes when they're first born. So I found the gel is really good for that. But I'll link to these foods in the description if you're curious to check any of them out. So for growth and size, it depends. There's a few types of mollies. There's the normal common mollies. So that's like the black silver mollies you'll see at the Petsmart, and that's what I have currently. They get to about 3 inches long. There's also sailfin mollies, and they can get to like 5 to 6 inches long. I've seen a few in the stores, and yeah, they can get to a pretty nice size. And I guess going back to what I said earlier about tank size, if you do have a sailfin, yeah, you probably want a 20 at the smallest for the tank, if not like a 29 for those. And then there's also balloon mollies, and they'll be a little chunkier, but they'll probably only get to like 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches or so. My experience with mollies has been they grow pretty slow. I've kind of find that like I'll get them at the store, and they kind of stay around the same size. They don't really get much bigger than they are in the store. And the black mollies I got were about 3 inches, so they were about almost fully grown. But the silver ones I got were probably 1.5 inches, maybe 2, and they kind of, while I had them, stayed the same size. So I find they grow kind of slow. As far as fry, I think that when I first was having fry, I wasn't feeding them necessarily properly, and I think this gel has really helped. But they'll kind of grow, I'd say they'll be about 1 inch, maybe like 3 months after you had them or so. That's kind of my experience. But yeah, but overall, I think they grow pretty slow, but they don't get that big. So that's kind of how it is for mollies from my experience. So for tank mates and aggression, they're very peaceful fish. They won't really bother other fish. They're a great community fish, other than if you don't want to put fish that like soft water in with them. But as long as, with other live bears are good, probably most tetras, they've been fine with angelfish. They'll be pretty peaceful with other fish. They will chase each other, but you want to be cognizant. You don't want other fish that are way too aggressive, because, they kind of will get bullied. I had a problem with the rainbow shark. And so I would say don't put a rainbow shark with them. He just didn't like them, and he's fine with all the fish in here. Otherwise, I haven't had any problems mixing them with anything else, and they've been totally peaceful towards other fish. Now, for keeping mollies together, they do like to be together, so I wouldn't recommend just getting one. I'd recommend probably getting 3 or more. The thing is that's very important is they prefer to have more females than males, and that's because the males try to mate all the time. You'll see it. They're just constantly swimming up to the females and chasing them around. And so if you have one male and one female, that female is going to constantly be harassed and get stressed over time. If you have more males, like if you have 2 males and 1 female, then it's even double, it's even worse. That female is probably not going to be doing good after like a month or 2 of that. Now you want 2 females every male generally. If it's even a more ratio, 3 males to 1 male or something like that, that's even better. But that's general rule of thumb. So if you're at a store, I'd probably recommend trying to ask. Sometimes it can be hard, but if you're at a local fish store, most will let you pick out the ones you want. And so the females are more round, and they have a little dorsal fin that's coming off the males don't have. And the males tend to be kind of longer and skinnier, but they have more of a pointed like dorsal fin. But otherwise, yeah, you just want more females than males, and it's pretty important. And if you don't, you'll kind of find that they're kind of stressed, and I think that's one of the problems I had that I'll talk about in a bit. Now, for interesting behavior notice, they are live bearers, which means a lot of fish will like lay eggs, and then the fry will be born that way. Mollies and other live bearers, they actually, just like kind of humans, they'll give birth to the fish live. And so it's much easier to breed them than most other fish because of that. And that's kind of one cool thing about them, is you really don't have to put much effort into them to have them breed in your tank. Like I've had them breed multiple times, and all the mollies I have currently were all born in my tank. So that's a really cool thing if you're into that. I guess the one thing to keep in mind is you need to have something to keep the population in control. I found dwarf gouramis are great if you have a smaller tank and you just want one fish that will kind of keep them in control. If you have little cages and stuff, definitely some fry will leave, so that's cool. But I'd say, if you have like 1 to 2 or 3 living out of a batch, that'll be okay. But they usually give birth from anywhere from 20 to 40 at a time. But if that's happening, your tank's going to be overrun real quick. And so you kind of come into a problem then. As I said before, males will try to mate incessantly. They'll constantly be chasing the females. So you got to keep that in mind. But you'll notice that the males kind of chase the females all the time. And sometimes the males will even chase each other. And another cool thing is the males will kind of flare up their fin, and you'll kind of see when they're trying to attract the females. When they do have fry, though, if the mollies are large enough, they will eat the fry. I've generally found if you have some hiding places and plans, you'll end up getting from 3 to 5 that live out of each batch of fry. Now, my recommendation for someone thinking of getting mollies is they're a great beginner fish. I think they're pretty easy to take care of. The only kind of difference between them and some other fish is you probably want to add some aquarium salt. But, the maintenance is going to be hard. You're not going to need to do anything special. They're great for communities as long as the other fish kind of match the parameters. And they're really cool and fun to see breed. So that's a really fun thing. And I think, having some caves and stuff, and you'll have a few just slowly grow up, I think is a really fun thing that I've enjoyed. So I'd recommend them for that. But what I'd say, if you think they're a cool looking fish and you think you'd like them in your aquarium, just kind of how they look, then get them. Otherwise, there's a lot of other fish. There's swordtails and a lot of other different fish that, guppies that you could alternatively get, and there's not really much difference. So I'd say, if you're going to get a live bearer, get the one that looks the best. I wouldn't say there's any particular reason to pick mollies over the other ones. Now for me, would I get them again in the future? Maybe. I wouldn't say that if I didn't have the ones I had now, I wouldn't be running out to get new ones. I do like kind of a more semi-aggressive community. And so I probably wouldn't ever put mollies again in this tank. Now, the ones that I do have, they were all born in my tank, and I find that really cool. So, I think that as long as I can keep raising, a few from each batch, I probably will at least keep some mollies like that and see, I think it'd be really cool if in 10 years from now, I still have mollies that were all born in my tank and I was just raising generation after generation. I think that's really cool and excites me, but I wouldn't necessarily be running out to get mollies if I lost them. But that's kind of my thoughts.
Thanks for checking out the video. If you found it helpful, please give it a quick like so that others can find the video more easily. I'd also love to hear if you kept mollies or have any questions. Anyways, I'll catch everyone in the next video.